I'm Gary Otto, the executive editor of the Arizona Capital Times, a subsidiary of State Affairs. At this point, I'd like to thank the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring these events. The Clean Elections Commission administers the Citizens Clean Elections Act, which voters passed in 1998. The act seeks to restore citizen participation and confidence in the political system, improve the integrity of the Arizona state government, and promote freedom of speech under the Arizona and U.S. constitutions. To tell us more, I'd like to introduce Gina Roberts. She's the Voter Education Director of the Citizen Clean Elections Commission. Thank you. Gina, it's all yours.
Thank you, Gary, and of course, thank you to the Arizona Capital Times for hosting the Meet the Candidates Week. So my name is Gina Roberts, and I'm the Voter Education Director here at Clean Elections. We are the state's nonpartisan voter education agency, and we're really happy to sponsor this event this week because we believe it's a great resource for candidates and voters, really to connect the candidates directly with the voters so that as you are contemplating the choices on your ballot, you have an introduction to them. So the upcoming election, it is on, our primary election is on July 30th, and all registered voters, including independents, can participate. And voting is actually well underway right now. Ballots went out on July 3rd, and we have in-person early voting locations, which are available right now. And again, throughout this week, you're going to have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates. We don't always get the opportunity to meet them face to face, to shake hands. And so the format for this evening, it'll give you a great introduction to them. And then if you want to learn a little bit more, you can look to your voter education guide, which was sent out by Clean Elections. It should have been in your mailbox. You can view it on our website. And if you really want to get more information, you can also watch the candidates in action through the Clean Elections debates. So our goal is to make sure that you, the voters, have all the information that you need to vote informed. And these candidates are asking for your vote. So really grateful that the Arizona Capital Times year after year has hosted the Meet the Candidates events because, again, it's your opportunity as the voter to hear from the candidates, learn about what their platforms are, why they're running for office, and why they're asking for your vote. So again, thank you for spending your evening with us. We appreciate the time that you're taking to vote informed. Thank you to the Arizona Capital Times for hosting this. And for all of your voting needs, whether it's for more information on the candidates or how to find out where your voting location is or how to get a ballot, you can visit azcleanelections.gov. So thank you so much, and thank you, Gary, for hosting this for our voters across the state.
Thank you, Gina. And now, just for a few housekeeping items. The first thing is that going to let the viewers know and the candidates know that this is not a debate. The idea is for the voters just to get to know you, know a little bit about you, your positions on issues and those kinds of things. And the way it's going to work is we're going to bring in the candidates in groups by the legislative district, and when we've asked them enough questions, we will take a short break and then bring in some more candidates. And tonight we're doing legislative districts 1 through 8, and we're starting with legislative district 1, and it looks like we've got a couple of candidates in the room already, and so it doesn't say on the screen here who's up at the top there. That's is that Mr. Ruby or Mr. Wildman?
This is Jay Ruby. I'm running for State House and LD1.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
you're a Democrat, and I know this gentleman, Senator Ken Bennett, and
hi, Gary.
Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.
So just to start out, I'm going to ask everybody the same question, to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office. So, Mr. Ruby, why don't you lead off with us?
Yeah, my name is Jay Ruby. I am an actor and a director with a deep passion for culture, serving the community. I'm a son of the American Revolution, and I was raised with what I call Appalachian values: participate, help others, and question authority. And my favorite founding father, Benjamin Franklin, said, "It is the first responsibility of every citizen to question authority." And I'm running for the state legislature because the Arizona state legislature needs to be questioned.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ruby. And Senator Bennett, why are you going back, or why do you want to go back, I should say?
Well, I'm Ken Bennett. fifth generation Arizonan. Been married to my wife for 42 years. We have 3 children, 4 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren on the way, because our younger 2 unmarried children are engaged to people with 4 and 2 children themselves. So I'm going back because if one word, I had to describe one word why I serve, and that is security. I want to help to secure our elections, make people have confidence that they are done correctly, secure the border, secure our state finances, and just make Arizona better tomorrow than it was yesterday.
Well, let's get right into the nitty gritty. One of the questions is, do you believe our elections are safe and secure? And what would you do to increase voter confidence of elections? Senator Bennett.
I think for the most part, our elections are safe and secure. We have to realize that there are mistakes made in every election because humans make mistakes and humans run our elections. But I think there's a lot of things that we do in elections in Arizona, such as the hand count by humans, counting a random sample of ballots that the machines have counted within the previous 24 to 48 hours. We've been doing that for 30 years. If the hand count of the 2% of ballot batches differs from the machine count by more than 0.5%, they have to double the sample to 4%. If the 4% sample differs by more than 0.5% from what the machines counted the day before, the county has to count 100% of the ballots. For 30 years, we've never had a hand count in any of the 15 counties that differed by more than 0.5% from what the machines had counted the previous few days or so. Are there improvements we need to make? Yes. What I would do to reinstall confidence as quickly as possible is I would have an election verification one of 2 ways. We could do what Idaho does, which is to release the anonymous ballot images and the spreadsheet called the cast vote record, where the votes from each of those ballots was added up. Or we could do what Maryland does, very Democrat state. They allow their counties to each conduct their elections on whatever election management system the county chose, just like we do in Arizona. But then Maryland has the counties send the ballot images that they just counted into the state, and the state counts those or tabulates them on an independent system, independent from what any of the counties use, and it's just a double check. And I think Arizona voters would appreciate, whether you think elections are fairly secure or there's a lot of Arizonans that are very skeptical of our elections, I think they would appreciate one or both of those approaches to verify that our elections were done correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Ruby, can you answer that question as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pivot on the question a little bit and say I think the perception that Arizona's elections have not been true to the test was promoted, and that there's a falsehood that somehow the election in 2020 was stolen. And I think it's important to remind people of that. I agree with Ken. Our elections have been done very well. In Yavapai County, we've had really good county recorders. The last county recorder got threatened and left her job because of those threats. I think we need to not only address election security, we need to address the perception that the election was stolen. That was promoted by some people, including one of the people running for office in LD1. And we need to choose candidates who are not creating a false sense of a stolen election. That is dangerous for our republic, and that is dangerous for the state of Arizona. I think our elections, early voting is another thing I want to say. We need to preserve our early voting. And there are people in the LD1 race who want to get rid of early voting. That is not okay. Arizonans love early voting. It makes it easy, it makes it efficient, and it makes it accessible. We need to not only look at security for elections, we need to look at making the franchise of voting more accessible for all our citizens.
All right, thank you for that. And I'll ask Mr. Ruby the question first. So what do you see as the job of a legislator?
I'm going to say the first job of a legislator is to make sure we have a budget that goes to the governor. And I would say we are not getting our money's worth from the current legislature. When $1 million goes to Legos, we aren't getting our money's worth from the state legislature. When here in LD1, there was a $15 million, I call it misappropriation, that went to a city rodeo group, when the city of Prescott actually needs fire stations to keep our property insurance rates affordable, when that's happening, we're not getting our money's worth from the state legislature. When we have cities and towns that cannot manage their own short-term rentals because they're handcuffed by the state legislature, we're not getting our money's worth. So I think the primary responsibility of a legislator is to put forth budgets that serve the people of the district. And the next thing is to make laws that keep us safe and secure and open up opportunities for all Arizonans.
All right. Senator Bennett?
Well, I would agree that the first responsibility of the legislature is to adopt a budget every year. Where government puts its money is the ultimate policy statement. In the last 2 years, even with a Republican legislature, although by very narrow margins, and a Democrat governor, we have passed 2 budgets that were not only passed bipartisan in the legislature, but signed by Governor Hobbs. That was similar to the 4 years that I was Senate president in 2003, 4, 5, and 6. Those were the first 4 years that Janet Napolitano, the last Democrat that we had before Katie Hobbs, was the governor, and we passed 5 budgets in 4 years. We actually had to fix the budget from Governor Jane Hall the year before that was kind of underwater because of the recession that occurred after 9/11. So of the 10 years that I've been in the legislature, 6 of those 10 years have been with Democrat governors, Republican legislatures, and we've passed budgets all 6 years that were balanced and moved the state forward. It's easy to say that any little part of a budget is not the way somebody else would have liked it, but every part of a budget was advocated by somebody and supported by at least 16 votes in the Senate, 31 in the House, and the governor signed it.
All right. So the governor just signed a $16.1 billion budget. So what are your thoughts on the spending plan? I mean, you voted for it, am I correct?
No, I actually voted against the budget because
Okay.
I had told the governor months ago that the most important thing I wanted in the budget was $2 to $3 million of 11 million that's already sitting up at the state treasurer's office from a previous legislature that put $11 million, parked $11 million there for election integrity. I told her that I wanted $2 to $3 million to do one of those 2 election verification projects that I described earlier, either the Idaho model or the Maryland model. She rejected that, I think, at the unwise recommendation of some groups who are afraid of transparency in our elections, or they think somehow that verifying our elections implies that there was a problem with the elections. I don't think that at all. I think, as Reagan said, trust but verify. And when people see that we're willing to be transparent and to allow our elections to be publicly verified, I think that adds confidence to our elections. So because that $2.5 million was rejected by the governor, I was a no on the budget, but had that been included, I would have been a yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ruby?
Yeah, I think when we look at the budgets, I like to say we've had 60 years of the same party in charge of the legislature. And I'm going to say we've had cut and deplete conservatives that have basically looked at minimizing taxes and not looking at revenues. And this has created an imbalance in Arizona. The last flat tax is hurting us. The ESA voucher program is hurting us. And the dilemma for Arizona is we had a surplus and now we're in a deficit. And when there's a deficit, things get tight. And the cuts that could be coming to cities and towns, I spoke to someone on Prescott City Council. They said they're looking at a 7% reduction in their budget. that can hurt firefighters. That can hurt police. I don't think we're getting our money's worth from the legislature because the legislature has been using a cut and deplete approach to the budget. Cut taxes, deplete social services. I don't think that's good for working class Arizonans. And that is what needs to change. And that is why I'm going to ask voters to do something they haven't done in Yavapai County, which is to vote for a Democrat who cares about working class people in Yavapai County.
So, Mr. Ruby, you heard Senator Bennett talk about, serving in divided governments before. How would you, as a legislator, go about working within a divided government?
Oh, I would listen to people and have discussions. And I don't think that's happening as well as it could at the state legislature. The other thing is, I would probably fight with my party bosses on both sides because I'm most interested in seeing Yavapai County get represented, but I know that means compromise between rural and urban. And we're considered a rural county, but Prescott is like a burgeoning metropolis sometimes. You actually have traffic problems here. Ken can attest, I'm sure. Nothing like Maricopa. But there is a divide in this state between rural and urban. And a lot of the budget fights come down to that. I would be advocating for rural interests, whether it comes to water, housing, growth, environment. There are rural perspectives that would need to be heard. And I'm sure I would find common ground with other rural legislators.
Senator Bennett, how have you gone about, what's been your personal philosophy in working within a divided government?
Well, I find that rarely does good public policy fall exclusively in a Republican or a Democrat domain as far as party politics. What's good for Arizona is usually a combination of reasonable and sensible people from both parties. You don't have to sacrifice your principles, but you have to work together and compromise, especially when you have a Democrat governor, Republican legislature. I'm being attacked right now by two opponents in my Republican primary because I dared to vote against Republicans on 4 or 5 bills in the Senate, where I was the only one or one of a couple Republicans that said, wait a minute, there's a problem with this bill and I'm not going to vote for it unless it's fixed. I don't vote with Democrats as they accuse me of doing, but I also don't blindly vote with Republicans. I vote on the merits of each bill. And if I happen to be the only one or one of 2 Republicans that's voting against something, so be it. But there were more than 500 Republican-sponsored bills in the Senate. And the biggest attacks that I'm getting from my own party, the far right now, is that I voted differently than the Republicans on 4 or 5 of those more than 500. I'm gonna continue to vote on the merits of what I think moves Arizona forward. There was one bill that they're criticizing me because it was going to supposedly try to fix elections in Maricopa County, but the good election folks up here in Yavapai County told me it's going to mess us up here. So I voted no. I was the only Republican that did so, and I'm kind of being hammered for it, but I'll take those hammers to do the right thing.
All right, thank you, Senator. So, what do you think of the legislature's progress on the housing shortage, and what more do you think should be done? Senator Bennett?
We made a lot of progress this year. We had several bills that passed on a bipartisan nature and were signed by the governor. There were a few that were vetoed. I think the pressures are so massive just from a general economic standpoint. I saw a little evaluation the other day that in 1950, the average home was like $50,000. And the average, I think it was wage or something, was 8,000. Anyway, if the average household price of housing had just increased by inflation over the last 40 or 50 years, the average price of home in Arizona would be hundreds of thousands less than it is right now. So I think we suffer from the the fact that there are a lot of people wanting to move to Arizona. I think there's a lot of things that we have done that make Arizona attractive to people from around the country, from the left and the right, who are flocking to Arizona. That creates a huge demand and it drives up prices. So we made some progress this year, but we need to continue to work on that because the average earner in Arizona isn't anywhere close to being able to afford to make a down payment and get into a home that they can own for the rest of their life.
You got any ideas on how to do that?
I think we need to reduce regulations and make sure that what's happening at the local levels as far as zoning and cities and counties looking over the backs of people that are trying to build affordable housing and saying, well, we want this and we want that, and we want you to make everything on large lots. And we're going to have to compromise and work together between the state and the counties and cities to come up with some market-driven answers to help people afford getting into a home.
Mr. Ruby, what do you have to say about the progress of the housing shortage?
I know a number of young people in Yavapai County who feel hopeless. They grew up here and they feel hopeless about being able to buy a home and grow a family and live here. And that is not a condition that is positive. I think some of the things that we could do are incentives for infill in cities. There are cities with empty lots that need infill. We also need to create housing that is affordable, and that can be incentives for developers to create affordable housing. I know there have been some programs like that, but I think one of the keys to all of this is local control. And cities and towns, I've talked to different people on city councils throughout Yavapai County. They feel handcuffed because the state legislature does not allow towns and municipalities to set their own regulations on short-term rentals. There are cities, Sedona is one, in which the housing stock in short-term rentals is driving up rents and it's driving up the price of houses. Ken is correct. People want to move here and they're going to continue moving here. And we need to allow cities and towns to be able to create their own solutions, because a top-down solution from Phoenix creates unnecessary regulation and ineffective regulation. It needs to be local control. I'm also going to add on this that any housing solution needs to be tied to water, and water conservation needs to be incentivized by developers, so that the way that we're using our aquifers to support growth and development through housing has to be monitored and measured, so that we're not going to be depleting our aquifers while we're building housing.
All right, let's hit a couple hot topics. A Maricopa County judge just ruled that the Secure the Border Act can stay on the ballot. Is this ballot referral good policy in your opinion, and what do you think the state legislature should do with border policy? Senator Bennett?
Well, I voted for it, but I held that bill up because it needed some amendments to it. One, to make it constitutional. The original draft of the bill created a new state crime of entering Arizona directly from a foreign country without going through a lawful port of entry as being a state crime. But they tried to apply that retroactively as though they were going to punish and deport the DACA, the Dreamer kids who got into DACA between 2012 and 2021. To me, that was a blatant violation of the U.S. and Arizona constitutions that prohibits ex post facto laws. I took a lot of heat from people on the right that I held that bill up for a couple of weeks to make changes to make it constitutional. And I think the changes that I got during that week or two helped ensure that it was found by the courts a few days ago to be constitutional and could go to the vote of the people. I don't think there's anything wrong with there being a state crime that if you come into Arizona illegally from a foreign nation, that you are violating state law in addition to federal law, so that local law enforcement, sheriff's deputies, local police departments, highway patrol, anyone along the border that sees that activity can arrest and detain. There's a self-deportation option in there. And I think some of the amendments that I got helped make that withstand the legal challenge that it just successfully survived.
All right, thank you, Senator. Mr. Ruby.
I do think it was critical. You can't change the law and punish people retroactively. So I'm going to, Ken isn't really my opponent, but we are on opposite sides of the aisle. But I would say that is a critical thing that happened in that bill. You cannot punish people retroactively by changing the law. That's wrong. I think there is a crisis at the border, but I think it's actually a crisis of our humanity. And we need to be able to monitor who is coming in. And it is a federal issue at the border. Like federal law supersedes state law. So the question I'd have with this bill is if we get a new border immigration bill passed, and there was one that went through Congress that was rejected by the Republican Congress, even though it had many things in it that they wanted. If that had gone through, would that have impacted the state bill because federal law is going to supersede state law? So we need to be very clear about what the federal law is. Ultimately, though, I think what the state of Arizona can do regarding the border is to help facilitate processing. We need to determine who can be a good, useful United States citizen and deserves a chance to be in this country versus a blanket approach that basically rejects everyone. And there are advocates to basically reject everyone who's coming here for immigration. I think that's wrong. I don't think that makes our country stronger. There was a young man who grew up in Prescott, Paco Cantu. He wrote a book called The Line Becomes a River. He spent a few years as a border guard. I would recommend reading his book to get a real perspective on what is happening at the border and to develop a humane policy that is effective at bringing in people who can really contribute to this country.
All right, thank you. And we've got a question from the audience. How will you support equitable broadband access for students and others? Mr. Ruby?
First, I want to say broadband, I mean, Yavapai County is talking about its expansion of broadband throughout the county. It's coming to Paulden, it's coming to Skull Valley, it's coming to a lot of the places that haven't had it. And that was a result of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act from President Biden. So there has been a growth and attention to making sure that broadband is accessible to rural populations. I think that includes students. So broadband is increasing. I think in our digital age, if you don't have access to the internet, it's like not having a car. You don't get to participate in society as much. And because of the commerce possibilities that run through the internet, we need to be able to make sure there is equitable access to broadband, students included.
Senator Bennett?
And I would say the best thing the state can do is to make sure that tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that Arizona has and is receiving to the expansion of broadband actually gets the job done. It doesn't get siphoned off and used for administrative expenses. So just spending that money effectively.
All right. Any last statements from either, or could both of you give us some last statements, kind of sum it up?
I'll let you go first, Ken.
Oh, well, I serve because I want to make Arizona better tomorrow than it was yesterday. I am taking a lot of heat right now because I will work across the aisle. I'll listen to Democrats and work on bills. I had 7 bills that got through my Senate Education Committee. I'm the chair of the Senate Education Committee in the Senate. And I had 7 bills that passed through the Senate Education Committee and the entire body of the Senate with somewhere between 24 and 30. One of them had unanimous support in the Senate, supporting those 7 education bills. When it got over to the House, because I had dared to challenge two or three bills that the far, far right, the Freedom Caucus, both in the House and the Senate, demanded every Republican had to fall in line and do, because I dared to challenge two or three bills. All 7 of those bills were not even heard by the chairwoman of the Education Committee in the House, effectively killing them all when they had strong bipartisan support. And in fact, one of them had unanimous support in the Senate. So I'm going to continue to work for Legislative District 1. I'm going to fight for the things that I think make Yavapai County and Legislative District 1 better. Then I think in terms of what makes the entire state better. But when I look at a bill, I don't look at whether it was sponsored by an R or a D. I look at the merits of a bill. I'm being highly criticized because in my education committee, I heard more Democrat sponsored bills than in any other committee of the Senate. Many of them failed, but at least they got a hearing. And I guess I would push back a little bit that I don't think there's anything wrong with the education scholarship accounts that are allowing the parents of over 75,000 children who have been paying taxes and also paying for their private education of their students to get a little bit of a scholarship to help educate their children at the place that they believe that happens best. I had the most beautiful visit with a mom about a month ago who got an ESA scholarship right when the program was expanded to universal access around the state. And things were kind of shut down from COVID and she couldn't get services out of the school districts. And so she spent a few $100s to get some evaluation for her daughter. They found out she was dyslexic. They worked with the school where the ESA scholarship was going to. They adjusted the curriculum for that daughter. She made up 3.5 years of being academically behind where she should have been in a matter of 7 or 8 months, just because that family had the ability to put that child in a school of the parents' choice and work with the professionals in that school to get that child what it needs. Turned her life around, and her life will forever be better because of that. So I support school choice. I support empowering parents to choose the best education experience for their children. Education is by far the largest part of the state budget. It's well over 60% of the state budget goes to education, either at the K-12 or higher education level. And the best thing we can do for Arizona is provide a good education for the next generation so that they can make it better than it was for us.
Thank you, Senator. And Mr. Ruby, close us out for Legislative District 1.
I'll probably agree with the very last statement Ken said, which was we need to provide the best education possible for the next generation. I would differentiate and say the dilemma with the ESA program and the voucher program is that it's depleting resources from public schools, where we need to reduce student-teacher ratios. We need to retain our quality teachers. And if we can't pay quality teachers, they go elsewhere. And our quality of public education declines. In the example that Ken gave, that student got individual attention, which I think for students who need special needs, that is important. But imagine what we could do for public school students if we had lower student-teacher ratios, if we were able to retain our quality teachers. But to answer the other question that led into this, I think the real key in Arizona actually is flipping the legislature. Ken spoke about his bills not being heard. This happens frequently for Democrats. Example would be Senate Bill 1551 regarding the creation of rural management areas to monitor and measure our water and to create the ability to put some limits and controls on groundwater pumping. That never got a hearing. And there are people, and I will call them extremists, who just simply refuse to allow dialogue and ideas to come to the table and be heard. That is wrong. And the only way to stop that, in my opinion, is to flip the legislature and vote for Democrats so that we can have a change and remove 60 years of one party ruling the legislature. You will see dialogue like you haven't seen before if you elect people like me to the state legislature, and my teammates at the Clean Slate for Democracy, Marcia Smith, who's also running for State House, and Mike Fogel, who is running for State Senate.
And we'll hold you to
Ruby
that.
and I approve this message.
And Gary, I want to jump on Jay's remembering the people that he's running with. I'm very honored to serve with Selena Bliss and Quang Nguyen as the two state representatives in the House from this district. I think we make the best team down there of all the 30 districts. And so I want to mention their names as well. Thank you, Jay, for doing so for your team as well.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. And we'll be back in a few minutes for Legislative District 2. Thank you.
Be well.
Welcome back. And we're here with candidates from Legislative District 2. And I recognize some of the faces, but I just want to go through, and I'll go from left to right on my screen. If you could just introduce yourself and, just tell us why you are running for the legislature. Let's start with you, Representative Schwiebert.
Hi, Gary, and everyone watching. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have been serving in the State House of Representatives since 2020. I never imagined that I would be in politics, but after teaching for 27 years, I started volunteering in a second grade classroom when the teacher left because she had to work 4 jobs to make ends meet. That made me really alarmed. I learned that 1 in 3 students no longer has a permanent qualified teacher, which is horrifying, not just for those kids and their families, but for our economy and for our employers. So I have been proud to serve my community for the last 4 years. I've decided to run this year for the state Senate. Frankly, to continue my advocacy not only for public education and school choice, but also for the ability to make sure that we're protecting our most essential freedoms like abortion and like our ability to vote, and to make sure that we're addressing affordability for everybody across Arizona. My theme, and I take it seriously, is let's make an Arizona where everyone can thrive. In the past, what I have seen over the past 4 years is that the extremists in the Republican Party have been dictating our agendas in the legislature. And as a result, almost no Democratic bills are heard. I think there are good ideas from both sides of the aisle. And by winning this Senate seat in LD2, I hope to at least tie up the legislature so that both parties, all Arizonans, can be represented in the legislature.
Thank you, Representative Schwiebert. Danielle Hagan, could you please tell us why you want to run for the legislature?
Hello, well, thank you for having me. My name is Danielle Hagan, and I am running for the House of Representatives in LD2. I am running because I don't feel that Arizona, we the people have been represented very well in the last few years, and I feel that we need more of regular everyday folks getting involved in local government to show regular people and their regular needs. When we have others that are above us dictating, we're not looking at what Arizona actually needs. We have a wide open border. We have schools that are failing, and we have businesses that are closing. And we all know that, you know, our small businesses are the backbone of America. And I would like to see more small businesses come into play and our school choice being defended. And I would also like to see that our border is secure. I love immigrants as much as everybody else, but we don't know who is coming across, and it is causing a lot of problem. So I'm running because I would like to see Arizona be as best as it can be, and I think putting more people like us in there will help do that.
Thank you. And we have Stephanie Simichik. You're running for the House, and you're a Republican.
Hi, Gary. I am running for House, but I am a Democrat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, as well as a public school board member for the Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board. And I really feel that in these roles, I've seen firsthand the challenges and aspirations that our families in our district are facing. So public education in the entire state has been underfunded for way too long. And yet public education is one of the most critical investments that we can make in our children. It's education for everybody. And there's choice in there as well. And we also need to be addressing the water and environmental changes and challenges that we're facing by prioritizing conservation, investing in water infrastructure, and fostering innovation that we have available with all of our very smart-minded Arizonans. We also need to secure reproductive freedom and take the appropriate steps to address the shortage of our affordable housing crisis that we have here in Arizona. And I truly feel that these are not partisan issues that are affecting us. They affect all of us, regardless of our political affiliation.
All right, thank you. Now we have Tom Symes, and he's got on his screen that he's an independent, so I can't mess that up. So, Mr. Symes, why are you running for the legislature?
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me. What prompted me is, like a lot of people, I find myself just sort of disillusioned by the party politics and the division and the general inability to work together to get things done. So I thought I can either continue complaining about it or I can try to be part of the solution. Our legislature here has turned lawmaking into partisan game playing, and frankly, it's just disheartening. And I understand you go against your party, you get censured, you get primaried, you get cut off from donors, but I think we need new perspectives, new voices, independent voices, and people who want to actually solve problems instead of grandstanding. Writing laws is serious business. They're just not just words on paper. They affect the lives of real people. And running as an independent, I definitely chose the harder path, but I'm not going to be beholden to a party or big donors. As an independent, I don't have big donors, believe me. But, I can vote my conscience to hopefully help make life a little better for my fellow Arizonans, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you. And Ari, I know you're a Republican, Ari Bradshaw. Why are you running for the legislature?
Hi, sir. My name is actually pronounced Ari. It comes from Hebrew,
Ari.
so it has that deep A in it.
Okay.
Indeed, so I'm so happy to be here with y'all. I'm running for the legislature. I'm the only native Arizonan actually running in this race. I'm a fourth generation Arizonan. My grandparents are proud Democrats in this district, and I'm proud to have bipartisan support and be endorsed by nonpartisan water board members in this race. For far too long, Arizona, we have had radicals tear this state apart when we used to be a nation, or we used to be a state that was governed by center-right, sensible, common sense individuals. We have ran away from that, and now we have the far right dictating many of our policies. I just got into a huge spat with one of our, famous senators for some issues that I had with her, bringing overt racism into the party, which I think is absolutely despicable. You need to stand against that. I'm the Republican who will call out my own party when it needs to be called out. I've done that throughout my entire career as an activist. I started off as a registered independent. I voted for Sinema and for McCain in my first election ever. And I want to continue bringing that bipartisanship and knowledge for both sides to the state legislature. I'm a product of school choice, and shortly after my father, or right around the time my father shot himself in front of my sister and myself after he dealt with opioid addiction for years, I went to a private school that better fit my learning style and values. And I firmly believe that getting myself out of a school which didn't fit my learning style and values into one which did completely changed the direction of my life and brought me from a single mother household on welfare to the position where I am today, where I own 2 local businesses and have wonderful clients all across the valley. I got a scholarship as well to university, and I'm a big believer that we need to make sure, and I believe that we can all agree on this, that every child deserves excellent education options, no matter what their zip code or income is. Education saved my life. It can save the lives of many other Arizonans. And we need to make sure that we do that while also protecting people's First and Second Amendment rights. I'm a Jewish Arizonan. My family spent more time in Arizona than we have spent anywhere in the world since Judea 2,000 years ago. I don't want to have to tell my children and future grandchildren that we have to leave because that we've lost what made Arizona so special, a place to raise a family, run a business, and thrive. So that's why I'm running. I want to make sure that we have Arizonans who know this land in office, who understand the bipartisan history that Arizona has had in the streak of working together, not against each other, that unifies us. So those are the reasons why I'm running. I'm very proud to be here, and I'd be honored to serve with any of the other House candidates present today.
Thank you, Ari. And next question will be to you, and then we'll go back around the horn, so to speak, all right? So what do you see is the job of a legislator?
That's something that I've actually talked a lot about that with constituents and family members and people at doors. I think it's a very solid balance of leading and listening to constituents. There are issues where you need to be the one informing and educating the constituents on what is happening in the legislature. I've considered myself to be a good communicator. I've constantly released videos. You can go check my website or my social media profiles. I release videos on the bills which are being moved through the State House and State Senate. And I think part of the job of the legislator is to educate people on what is happening, so that way they're more informed and can make better decisions themselves in their future voting. And the other job is one of my good friends who was the Democratic whip over this past session, Melody Hernandez. When the vote to override the governor's veto on the tamale bill came up, she would call her constituents for 2 days straight and talk to them about what they wanted her to do on the bill. I thought that was superb leadership. That is what we need to be doing as our legislators. When controversial bills come up, we can't be making the decisions all by our lonesome. We have to be reaching out to our constituents on both sides of the aisle, especially in a district like this, where the plurality of our voters are unaffiliated or other voters. We need to listen to our constituents, and we also need to lead our constituents and educate them. So I think the balance of those two is probably the most critical job, to make sure that the proper laws are being introduced and that we're voting the way that our constituents in the best for the best of our constituents.
Thank you, Ari. Tom?
You're muted, Tom.
Sorry about that. I agree with Ari. We're a nation of laws, the rules that we live by, and legislators are our voice in choosing how we live, which means they also have to be accountable to us and responsible to us and understand our needs. And listening is paramount. I just don't feel like we're being listened to. We're being dictated by what the parties want.
Okay. Stephanie?
Thank you. Yes, I agree as well as oh, can you hear me? Okay, sorry. I feel like the main job of the Arizona legislature is really to support our communities by addressing issues that our communities are facing, everyday Arizonans. That's not limited to, but includes education, economy, water, crime. And the job of our as representatives is to develop and pass these laws that address these issues to meet the needs of our communities. And I do agree with the other two gentlemen. The current majority at the legislature right now is not meeting the needs of the communities. Voices are not being heard. There's wonderful bills that have been written and created that literally because there's a letter next to their name have not been presented for an opportunity to really help and grow and take care of Arizonans.
Thank you. And Danielle?
Hi. Okay, so I believe that protecting our freedoms and our liberties is the most important thing as a Arizona legislator. I believe that we have to look to the future, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we are putting things in place that can ensure our future by educating our children and ensuring that they can move on in the world. I also believe that it is our job to represent everyone in Arizona, not just our district, but everybody in Arizona. We have many cultures here. We have many different ways of life here, and protecting our freedom is probably the most important thing that any legislator can do. It's not about passing the law, it's about protecting the liberty. It's about making sure that the laws that are passed are not going to interfere with what is constitutionally our God-given right. I do want to, on a side note, condemn what happened to our former president on Saturday. And I just hope I wish him his best, and I wanted to bring that out. So thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Schwiebert?
Yes, thank you very much. I, for the most part, agree with what everybody has said. Really, the main job of a legislator, and I've taken this very seriously since 2020 when I was first elected, is to make sure that we're listening to the people of our community, to find out what their priorities are. And that's why Stephanie and I are so committed to making sure that we are knocking on doors and listening to people and reaching out and making phone calls. Why I've held monthly Zoom town halls and in-person town halls ever since I've been in office, because it's really important to hear what people's priorities are. Of course, the main job of the legislature is to pass a budget. In fact, it's the only responsibility that's outlined in our Constitution. But with that budget goes policies, and making sure that those policies are aligned with what it is that the people of our district are wanting. And right now, what I am hearing as we're knocking on doors is that people want their legislators to work together and to make sure that every student gets a quality education, that our neighborhoods are safe, to rein in some of these skyrocketing costs in housing and healthcare and childcare, and that we are continuing to listen and work together. That's why I'm running for the Senate, because we need somebody who's going to be continuing to listen and work together with people from both sides of the aisle, rather than just one side of the aisle getting to have bills heard and, and listened to. Everybody in Arizona deserves to be represented, and that's not happening right now.
All right. Thank you, Representative Schwiebert. So let's start with Stephanie on this question. So the governor just signed a $16.1 billion budget. What are your thoughts on the spending plan that she just signed? And I believe you're muted.
Sorry about that. The budget to me is not necessarily ideal. It does pass the aggregated expenditure limit, lifts that, which protects some of our investments in housing and well as education. But I think that we are not addressing the major issues and that continue to be left behind. The negative impact from the implementation of Governor Ducey's flat tax, as well as the ESA expansions, are still looming over our state and our bankrupting state. And we have not addressed the issues that are important to everyday Arizonans, such as education funding, the environment, water, and housing. And until we do that, I really can't say that I think the budget is meeting the needs of the Arizona people.
All right, Mr. Symes, I'm sorry.
Actually, it is Sims.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's much easier to do a budget when you're in the black. So I hate to Monday morning quarterback, but at the beginning of last year, we were $1.5 billion over budget, and 20 to 30 million was doled out by each representative outside of the appropriations process. And now we're kind of in the hole that we're in. If we hadn't done that, and we would have had the money to deal with the ESA problems and balance the budget, I think.
Thank you. Ari?
Yeah, and so I would have been a no on the budget for one very simple reason. They cut out the opioid settlement funds. I completely agree with Attorney General Chris Mays on this. We should not have touched those. It is despicable that that we decided to touch those. And I would have been one of the loudest fighters against that during the process. I think in order to balance our budget, we can't be passing one-off tax cuts that only affect a small segment of the population when we are dealing with a budget crisis like we are now. We have our rainy day fund, but if we keep going at the rate we're going to have issues. I'm a small business owner, and I've been managing budgets for my entire professional career. It blows my mind that we have people who have never managed a budget before in their lives in charge of the budget process, and that goes for both sides of the aisle, those who have weighed in heavily on budget things. We also have appropriations. I always like to tell this story about how when we had some road appropriations going through very quickly through appropriations last year, on the same day, we had a $6 million appropriation for a 2-mile long stretch of road in Prescott Valley on a Mount Kirby Road. Meanwhile, we had a $23 million appropriation to fix a 1-mile stretch of road in Flatland and Buckeye. There was no questions asked in committee. We simply passed it through. And that's a type of thing where I imagine, why are we not asking questions to at least have the people know why we're spending more on these projects, which seemingly, it begs the question, why are we spending more on the small or stretch of flat road than the mountainous road? Things like that we need to ask questions for. Additionally, I think that when managing the budget, we need to never, ever, ever try taking away money that would help children have a better future. Education is the most important expense in this state. It's the thing we spend the most money on. And I stand firmly against any sort of budget maneuver that would take away opportunities from the next generation. I know how much those opportunities meant to me and how much they meant to so many other students just like me who needed options. And so I will always defend options. We need to make sure that the long-term success of programs such as the ESA program, that we have security in place. That way we don't bankrupt the state. These are things which we can figure out in a bipartisan way, but the ESA program itself should not be blamed for the budget pitfall when we have one-off tax cuts, failures from the federal government to provide millions of dollars that they promised to us, and a myriad other issues, such as, just as Tom Sims mentioned, the $20 to $30 million appropriation per district, per legislator is ridiculous. We should not be making our budgets like that. We need to be making our budgets together for the people of Arizona without national partisan rhetoric getting in the way of creating those budgets.
Thank you, Ari. Representative Schwiebert?
Yeah, so I did vote yes on the budget because I felt that it was really the best that we were going to be able to get this year, given the circumstances. But I share a lot of very deep disappointments, frankly, about it. But the root of the problem is actually the fiscal irresponsibility by the one-seat Republican majority over the last decade. The Ducey flat tax that reduced taxes for the wealthiest Arizonans by $350,000 a year and reduced taxes for the poorest Arizonans by $4 a year is the primary cause of why we went from almost a $2 billion surplus to now almost a $2 billion deficit. So that's one of the things that led us to this hole. Second thing is the fraud and waste and abuse that's in the unaccountable ESA voucher program that's going to cost taxpayers almost, or did cost taxpayers almost $1 billion last year, and even more this year. Well, I do support school choice. When taxpayer money is involved, we need to make sure that private schools that accept ESA vouchers have some level of accountability and transparency to taxpayers as well as to parents. And yet the one-seat Republican majority would not allow any transparency measures to be brought forth at all. And then finally, I very much agree with what some others have said, that we had almost $1 billion in Republican pork projects like the Prescott Rodeo last year that received $15 million. What Democrats did is that we pooled that $20 to $30 million and made historic investments in the Housing Trust Fund. We're facing record skyrocketing prices for housing, and we're seeing too many people, especially senior citizens, now facing homelessness. So that Housing Trust Fund and the Emergency Housing Fund were really pivotal in that. So frankly, the three things that I talked about that Republicans have enacted in recent years have put our children and the elderly and the most vulnerable among us really at risk. But I really appreciate that Governor Hobbs and our Democratic leadership managed to negotiate some things that were wins in this budget, including making sure that we were ensuring the aggregate expenditure limit is extended for next year. What we really need to do is create a solution, a permanent long-term solution for that outdated 1980 era limit to what schools can spend. But that gets blocked almost every year. So that was a huge win. We need to make sure that we keep an opportunity rate for students who are living in poverty. That was in the budget for this year at least. We were able to invest $12 million in childcare, which brings down $131 million in federal funds. We were able to prevent harmful cuts to services and supports for children at DCS. We were able to invest $2 million for the Arts Commission, which I think is really important to the quality of life for all of us. We got a little bit more, $15 million for the Housing Trust Fund. And we were able to fund the Area Agency on Aging, not to the extent that they should be funded, but we got what we could. We also managed to make sure that we funded the governor's SAFE program to stop the flow of fentanyl, and local border support programs. So those were all things that I felt like I didn't want to put at risk by voting no on the budget. It was important to support those things, even though overall I was disappointed that we couldn't do better on several things.
Thank you, Representative Schwiebert. And you get the last word, Danielle.
I usually do. Well, thank you. I would like to say that I do agree with the millions that is being put to provide assistance for down payments for homes. That I agree with. The 55 million or 55 million that was going to the prisons. I would have voted no on this bill entirely, but I do believe that assistance for buying homes is very important if we want to see Arizona progress and build families. But the 284 million that they want for the Department of Corrections, I think is an extreme. I agree with the fentanyl, but let's be real here that a lot of our money is going to the immigration crisis that's happening at the border. And we are seeing thousands, if not millions of dollars every day, every month going to our border crisis. I think that needs to be curbed immediately, because we're taking from Arizonans and giving to people who didn't come here legally. That's they're overrunning the schools. I do believe that holding people accountable with school voucher fraud, I think that's pretty important. I would like to see a more comprehensive budget that's brought down to reality. We have prisons in there, we have the fentanyl, we have the schools, we have things that are just, doesn't make any sense. It's not common sense at all. 46 million to 3 state universities, 15 million to help stop the flow of fentanyl, that I agree with. 15 million in new funds for Arizona Teachers Academy. Well, when we have 70% of our teachers aren't even certified. So I would have voted no. I agree with most everybody on here for what they said, but 4.8 million to improve licensing inspections. I just think it's extreme.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And that's it for Legislative District 2. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I want to wish you all good luck in your races and your primaries. And we have Legislative District 5 coming up next after a short break.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And welcome back. And we're here with candidates from Legislative District 5 who have been waiting patiently. And I want to thank you for your patience. And tonight we have Representative Charles Lucking and Raina Potox. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. And you can correct me as we go. And we also have Joshua Ortega. And thank you for coming and welcome. And I'm going to ask you the same question that I've asked everyone else, and I'm going to try and throw a few new ones at you guys if you guys have been listening. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office. Let's start with the incumbent, Mr. Lucking. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Gary, and thank you everyone who's tuning in tonight. My name's Charles Lucking. I have the honor of currently representing the amazing Legislative District 5 in the Arizona State House. My kids are the third generation in my family to grow up in what is currently LD5. This city and this state are very important to me. It's my family's home, and it's a beautiful, diverse bundle of communities. I left home to serve in the United States Peace Corps in the South Pacific. That's where I met my wife. And when it was time for us to start our own family, we could have gone anywhere, but we made the decision we wanted to do it right here in Arizona. I became interested in activism and local politics about a decade ago through my concern about what was happening in our public schools. But I initially became interested in throwing my hat into the ring for this work because of my work as a housing rights attorney. More broadly, there are needs not only in my district, but across Arizona that need immediate attention. The skyrocketing rent, skyrocketing of eviction rates leading directly to a growing unhoused population. Our public schools continue to sustain bigger and more devastating ongoing attacks, and our democratic processes also continue to be attacked. And in the legislature, we need leadership that not only can differentiate between fact and fiction, but we also need representation that has the knowledge and expertise to understand how complex these issues are and the ability to work and co-govern with our many diverse communities and the willingness to do the hard work, to work across the aisle, to develop and implement real solutions.
Thank you. And Raina, why don't you tell us why you want to be a legislator?
Yep, sure. Raina Paddocks. Can you guys hear me okay? I know my internet is going in and out.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we can hear you.
awesome. Yeah, so I'm running as a write-in candidate for District 5 for the Arizona State House. And I kind of had an interesting, diverse set of experiences in the last decade and a half. I've spent the last 10 years as a leader in the technology sphere from end-to-end production. I spent the last 7 years married to my husband, and the last 4 years I've spent helping to plant a church in our district, actually. And a part of that church, we have what we call a shopping with dignity attachment to our church, which allows people in our community to come in to the church with a grocery cart and be able to walk through something that's set up just like a grocery store, but is completely free to anybody who has need. And in that time, and alongside a close friend who had a son who fell victim to the opioid epidemic, I was able to see up close just how needy our district is. And so I want to bring some of the expertise that I have leveraged in a few other experiences to the Arizona State Legislature.
Thank you. And what party are you running in?
Republican.
Republican, okay. And Mr. Ortega, you're a Republican as well, right?
Yes, sir, I am. My name is
Okay.
Josh Ortega, and I'm running for state senate here in LD5. And I, much like Rainu, I've gotten to meet. I have a very unique story. I'm not from Arizona. I moved here initially from San Diego. I served in the Army for several years until I decided to get out and pursue my education, where I transferred here to Phoenix to attend Arizona State, where I earned my degree as a journalist. And I worked for several small newspapers around the valley, including Mesa Tribune, Queen Creek Tribune, and several others. And politics for me is something that I really wasn't looking into until about 2016. And more recently, when I moved here to Arizona, I just wanted to understand, what politics is, how it works, how government works. I've always had an interest in it, in just learning how things run and just thinking differently than others. I never really was comfortable with being a conservative, but now I fully have embraced it. And I just think that government is vastly overspending our tax dollars, something that we all have a right to say whether or not we want to spend it on certain projects. And I'm here to just prove that politics is for everyone. The more people we get involved in these discussions, these tough discussions about tax dollars, the more our society is going to grow and be better for it in the end. And I got involved with my local precinct as a precinct committeeman, learning how to getting registered voters, and also just getting the word out and talking to people on the street, and understanding what problems they really that are important to them and their family. And so I'm just here to show that politics is for everybody. And elected office is something that no matter where you're from, if you live here in America, it's your government as well.
Thank you, Josh. And, we've got a divided government right now, a Democratic governor and a Republican-controlled legislature. So we don't know how it's going to shake up until November, but how would you as a legislator go about working in a divided government?
I guess I'll go first. I'm one that looks more toward what do the people really want, and I think that people just want to be able to work, come home, enjoy time with their family, and know that government is working for them. I'm a supporter of the school choice initiative that was passed by Governor Ducey, ESAs, and I think a lot of people have grown very tired of how it's evolved in the past couple of years. And I think we just need to get back to allowing people to spend their tax dollars how they see fit, especially with their children's education, which I believe is one of the most important things that we could spend any of our dollars on. And just being able to allow people to spend their own money more wisely, how they see fit, not how government sees fit. And
All right.
no, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead and finish your thought there.
Oh no, I was done. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Raina, how would you go about operating within a divided government?
Thanks, Gary. I believe firmly in policy over party. I think that there are many key ideals that we hold to as conservatives, but there are many, but I think somebody said this earlier, good ideas don't only come from one party, and to throw a bill away because it doesn't have the right letter behind it in its inception, I think is categorically incorrect. And so when you're working with people who disagree with you, which is all of life, if you want to get anything done, if you want to move the ball down the field and get somewhere, you need to be willing and able to have helpful and constructive dialogue and be able to come to decisions that benefit the most amount of people.
Thank you. And Representative Lucking, I mean, you've been there. How did you go about it? How would you go about it if you're elected again?
Yeah, thank you. It's such a great question, and obviously something that we're dealing with right now. Every time I come across one of the old timers down there who's been there for decades, I ask the question, what's different about now than 20 years from now, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? And, almost invariably, the answer is what we would expect, that, there were times in the 80s and 90s and 70s where there was very open communication between members across the aisle, between leadership and members, and that kind of communication is much, much more difficult right now because of what's happened culturally, where we're just so divided. The way you get through all of the problems that we collectively have as a state, in the legislative district, in the city of Phoenix, and in the whole state and the whole country, is through communication and having the bravery and the work ethic to go to the other members in the House and the other members in the Senate and members of your community who disagree with whatever your firmly held beliefs are, and having those conversations. And that's where you come to a middle ground where you can move forward as a community, as a state. And so that's how you do it. And that's the only way to do it. It's about communication and approaching everything with an open mind and an open heart. And there's going to be things that you just will never agree on, but those things that you can agree on, and those conversations will yield results that you may never have thought of in the first place. And so that's where we improve and move forward as a state, is through those conversations.
All right, we're just about out of time. Can each of you give me 1 minute apiece on why you should be elected, starting with you, Representative Lucking?
Thank you. Everything I've done in my life, I have led with compassion and empathy, with honesty and integrity, from my service with the Peace Corps to my work defending tenants being evicted from their homes, volunteering time with refugees and border communities, I've consistently put the needs and struggles of my communities first. Along those lines, in the session that I served in the Arizona House, I voted on over 500 bills. On every single one of those, I did the homework. I put in the time and consideration of what the impact on our diverse LD5 communities in our state may be. I engaged with our community groups, and I made sure that I was understanding the complexities of the issues where I was casting my vote. I'm an attorney. I'm well versed in working with those who disagree with me, and so I know how to get to a positive resolution. And I have a long, long track record of being a doer and a servant leader. Finally, while our LD5 is so beautifully blue, our sister districts are not, and so I am and will continue to do everything I can to help flip those seats in our neighboring districts to Democrats in the coming months so that we can make real progress for our public schools and our social safety nets. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Joshua?
Well, I served in the Army, and it made me a very pragmatic person, and I believe in common sense issues. And I'm a journalist, and I believe every person has a story to tell. And I just love talking to people. I've knocked doors. I've walked this district, and I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And the disconnect between the Capitol and what people are feeling in their neighborhoods is there's a gap. And we need to get back to talking to constituents and to really understanding what issues matter to them. I moved to Arizona from California because it was a Republican state, and like a lot of people. And I want to make sure it stays that way. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm a supporter of less taxes, and I'm a supporter of government working for the people, not for any special interest or anyone that has a vested interest in gaining from this and gaining vast amounts of influence or money from the system. I think that government is not a four-letter word. It's something that we all need to be a part of, and we all need to be involved in. And the more we can do that, the better our society and our state grows.
Thank you. And Raina, take us out.
All right, Gary. Well, I've spent the last, great many of years as a tech exec. I work in data specifically for the last 12-ish years. And that just means that I lead with the facts of reality. I care a lot about people, but I want to know what's really going on. And the fact of the matter, we've had over 10 million illegal border crossings in the last 3 years. Homelessness is up 30%, 23% in Arizona. Fentanyl is the #1 cause of death for young people in the United States, and childhood literacy is at a 3-decade low. If we say that we care about these issues, we need to know the facts of the matter so we can rightly address these things. And my commitment to my constituents is that I will always listen to voices on both sides of the aisle. That way we can come together to have a meaningful impact for Arizona. And I would say that not all progress is actually progress. Just because you've moved it forward doesn't mean you've moved it forward into something that's better. I think that we should be very, very careful in considering all legislation that comes across our desks and making sure that everything that we sign into law is going to benefit the people of Arizona. And that's my commitment.
All right. Thank you very much. And, I thank you all for showing up and coming. And thank you for your patience. And I wish you all good luck when it comes to your respective races. And just to let you know, we are going to be talking to Legislative District 6 when we come back from a short break. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
welcome back to Meet the Candidates. And now we're here with Legislative District 6. And joining us tonight is Senator Teresa Hatatli and Lloyd Johnson. And I know Senator Hatatli is a Democrat. And Mr. Johnson, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
Republican.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask you what I've asked everyone so far. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Mr. Johnson. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be a legislator.
Well, our district isn't getting as much attention as it should. Yeah, the representation isn't as strong as it needs to be. We're the farthest from Phoenix, and it shows. My big push is trade schools. I'd like to help the communities with the tools so that the people can strengthen the communities around here.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My first priority is always advocating for the rural areas of Arizona. And so the district is very much rural, and there's a lot of inefficiencies. There is a lot of just the reach from Maricopa County out to the districts that are in LD6. There tends to be a lot more of misrepresentation as well as a lack of resources. And so I think that it's very important to identify needs and then to be able to work with these various departments, state departments, so that various counties, towns, and smaller communities would be able to have access to those resources. So that's one of the priorities that I see within LD6, the very fact that it is very rural, and just the extent, the whole geographic landscape. We do need to constantly advocate and make sure that the voice is at the state capitol, so that we would be able to, some measure of equity, I think is very important. Thank you.
And, Senator, since you mentioned rural Arizona, what do you think of the legislature's progress on groundwater management, and what more do you think needs to be done?
Groundwater management, I think the conversation has been ongoing currently, and we constantly talk about the lack of regulation, the lack of oversight of groundwater. In this day and age, we have many of our aquifers that are starting to deplete. And I can understand the economic aspects of it, so that individuals can be able to sustain their lives and then also attain prosperity, not just to survive, but to prosper. But with that also, we have to constantly have on the table in that conversation to make sure that there's some sort of mitigation process so that we don't just deplete the groundwater. So I am a strong advocate to ensure that there is some measure of regulation just for the benefit of the future, our children and our grandchildren.
And Mr. Johnson, how do you think the legislature's been handling, the groundwater so far, groundwater management?
Not been able to keep up with that part. We do need to preserve our supplies.
Okay.
Not
Well,
but One of the problems, so the participation, there should be more wells, for providing water. They need water in their homes. There are too many homes out there that don't have water. That, like, I talked to several friends that live out there, like for hand washing during the pandemic. They had a pan of water for the whole family to wash their hands in throughout the day, which is not a good thing. So we do need more usable water, more drinking water. We need more water supply.
Okay. And so, Mr. Johnson, what do you see as the job of a legislator?
Represent the people. Go in there as the voice of the people. Listen to what the people have got to say. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever. Meet the needs of the people within the district. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Senator, what? Same question.
Thank you for the question. The job of a legislator is primarily to write laws and to advocate for the constituency. Legislative District 6 is very broad, land-based, and then even the culture, and then even the needs of the community varies. We do have some communities that are very, very rural. Their needs are very different than a community such as Holbrook or even Springerville compared to Flagstaff, which is within our district. And so those needs, they vary. So when we talk about financing various projects and from the state or even through tax generation, even at the city and the county level, that needs a lot of attention. And so that people that choose to live in these communities are being provided resources. And so, and I do agree, as Mr. Johnson spoke about, is that we have to listen, and then we have to make sure that we're able to do our research so that we can identify specific local needs, because the needs in Flagstaff are going to be different than even Show Low. Show Low's needs is going to also be different than the number of the tribal nations that are in the district. So there are places where you have to haul water. There's some places where they have windmills to provide electricity or even solar. So the needs vary, and you have to go out there and you have to listen and be able to have stakeholder meetings so that you're able to meet their needs at the state level.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. So, Mr. Johnson, do you believe our elections are safe and secure? And what would you do to increase voter confidence in elections?
Oh, that is a good question. Yeah, we do need people to feel like their vote counts, that their vote is secure. Too many people get discouraged and say, "Why even vote?" Well, if you don't vote, you're just giving up. You just, you gotta have your voice heard. Gotta make sure that people know that they need to get out. That is a major struggle. People they get so discouraged, and they don't feel like their voice gets heard. So reassuring people. I know right now a lot of people are trying to get out and encourage people. I think if everybody does their part to get out to vote, it makes it a lot easier for all of us that are trying to get into office to know that we've had the best shot. people working out there, and the people's voices are being heard.
All right.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was just an easy answer, just to click this button and everybody's going to go out there and vote properly. But I keep working it.
Okay. And Senator.
Thank you. Here in the state of Arizona, we seem to have this long-standing conversation that really impose unnecessary burdens on voters. And so many of these issues, especially from 2020 forward, have been tested, and then they have been investigated, and then many of them have been referred to the court systems, and the courts have ruled with the premise of what rights are allowed in our own civil liberties, as well as even the Civil Rights Act. And so many of these misinformation and disinformation have been tested, and they have been debunked. So currently, I can say that the voting systems that are here within the state of Arizona are very well represented for the state of Arizona as far as the voting population is concerned. So I have no qualms about it. We have a process in place if there's ever an issue, so that individuals can be rest assured that the numbers are counted accurately. So I think we have checks and balances in place to say, yes, we do have a voting system that is working, and it does represent the will of all Arizonans.
All right. So we're just about out of time. Senator, can you give us 1 minute on why you should be reelected?
Well, thank you. I came into this position to advocate, and advocating, you listen to all the constituents, those who are concerned, and then also, most importantly, to do research so that there's a benefit to many, so that you're making decisions and you're bringing forth actions so that it benefits the community, the constituents, so that they prosper. It's not about this class or that class, but what would be best for Arizonans. And so, as far as advocating is concerned, I think about education. I think about even the demographics that we have, elders, as well as adults, us today, children, youth, and even the disabled, as well as veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hototli. And Mr. Johnson.
All right. Yeah, education is very important. The one common denominator in this huge district, this is the largest district in the state, we need trade schools. We need kids to learn a trade. I talk to retiring tradesmen. Their biggest complaint is there are no young people to step up into their place, not enough of them. People send the kids away to college, they come back, all they've got is a student loan. In this region, there's not enough jobs to pay for those student loans, so they leave the area. That does not help the communities, does not help the families. With trade school, they can help strengthen the communities. They can go out onto the ones that live out on the reservation. They can learn trades of electrician, of plumbers, put water in these homes, and pipe them up, run electric through these homes. And several homes out on the reservation don't have electricity. With trade schools, like I said before, provide the tools so the people strengthen their communities. That's been my biggest trade schools, and that's where I've gotten a lot of positive feedback back in trade school.
All right. Well, Senator Hatatli, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Johnson, thank you. And thank you for your patience, for waiting so long to get on for a short time. And just want to let you know that Legislative District 7 is next. So we're just going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Meet the Candidates, and we are about to talk to the candidates from Legislative District 7. And I'll introduce them. And we have former lawmaker Walt Blackman from Sholo, I believe, right? Republican. We have Robert
Snowflake.
Snowflake. I'm sorry. There we go. I've been making mistakes all night long. So we have Roberto Ruvelis. I believe you're a Democrat, sir.
I am.
Yep. And we have Nancy Hartle running for the House on the Democratic ticket.
Correct.
And we have Haley Creighton running for the Senate as a Democrat. And last but not least, we have Barbie Engel running for the House as a Republican. Thank you all for coming. There's 5 of you, so probably go a little bit longer than we usually do with our candidates. So one question I've been asking everybody is, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you want to be a legislator. And let's start with you, Barbie Engel.
Hi, thank you so much. A little bit about me. I graduated from George Mason University in 1994 with a degree in social psychology. A week after graduation, I started my own business and it was very successful. I was also hired a year later as the head coach at Washington State University for the Spirit program. Then in 2002, I developed a rare disease and I asked my team doctors where I should go and they suggested I come to Arizona. So I ended up in Arizona and I started working on a nonprofit foundation in 2006 and to help people with chronic pain and rare diseases get the care to whatever they were facing as I was facing those same challenges. And in 2009, I started working on legislation. I've worked on over 100 bills in 36 plus states, as well as federal bills, and working with the Department of Defense. I've written 7 bills, and I've got 2 passed into law, all as a civilian. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. Haley.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am born and raised in Arizona, down in Chandler. Moved up to Flagstaff about 6 years ago to attend NAU, where I graduated with a BS in political science. And I decided to get involved in politics because I really wanted to do something with everything my generation has lived through at such a young age. I am 24 years old, and I really hope to bring a new perspective and a new voice to our state legislature. I want to show people like me, young people, queer people, women, that our dread over the future is definitely valid, but it does not have to stop us from using our voices and staying involved in the state. I have experience as the Northern Regional Director for the Arizona Students Association, where I work every day with students to work on advocacy and organizing skills, as well as working with our state legislature and our local governments. So I'm very excited to bring a new perspective and to inspire young voters to vote in this upcoming election.
All right, thank you very much. And Walt.
Hey, thanks for having me. I do appreciate it. And I'm so glad to finally meet the other candidates from the other side. Barbie, it's always good to see you. And I hope everybody's having a great and wonderful week. I'm Walt Blackman, and I served in the Arizona House of Representatives from 2019 to 2023. I'm married. I have 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl. Been married for 20 years. I spent 20 years in the United States Army, deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and was awarded the Bronze Star Medal and the Meritorious Service Medal for just hanging out with the military, I guess. After I retired in 2016, moved to Arizona, where we are from, in the lovely town of Snowflake. And my wife got tired of me sitting at home not being deployed. So she said, you need to find something to do. And I ran for office. Wanted to get off my laurels and help our community and move forward with that. I've moved several pieces of legislation, balanced the budget, funded K through 12 funding, worked on criminal justice reform, earned release credit, also worked on parent choice, brought over 240 jobs to our region, and just was able to do some great things with some great people. I look forward on going back because we have a lot of work to do. We need to take a look at our water, our roads, forestry. I was part of the drought contingency plan and also putting stop gaps in that and making sure that we have our 100-year water source, and also making sure our forestries are protected like Flagstaff, and making sure that those folks have the resources they need. And then instrumental in making sure that our 2% tax cap was in place. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to land my plane, but that's me, and I'm just humbled to be here, and I look forward to just meeting everybody and having a great conversation.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Revelis.
Yes, my name is Roberto Revelis. I'm a native Arizonan, born in rural Arizona, Miami to be exact. And my childhood experience is what gave me the determination, the will, if you will, the dedication to speak out for vulnerable communities. It was a totally segregated community. I was not allowed to go to the American school. I had to go to the Mexican school. I was punished for being speaking my native language. And that's what formed my social conscience, quite frankly, and forged my dedication to civic engagement. I went on to graduate from Georgetown University after serving 4 years during the Korean War, assigned to NATO Air Headquarters in Southern Europe. After graduating from Georgetown, I decided to stay and work within the congressional system. I approached members of Congress from Arizona to get a part-time job, as I thought, to help fund my education. And I ended up spending 44 years working in the Congress with Stuart Udall, and I ended up retiring as Chief of Staff to Morris Udall when he was chairman of the House Interior and Institutional Affairs Committee. Thereafter, I spent 12 years in the private sector. I was recruited by
the largest and oldest gold mining company in the U.S., Homestake Mining, that had made a world-class discovery of gold, but in a very environmentally sensitive juncture of 3 different counties, including Napa County. And so I dedicated myself to bring my environmental sensitivities, if you will, and standards and commitment, and help produce out of a group of contentious stakeholders a unified community that allowed us to get permitted and to produce a very effective gold mining company. At the end of the permitting process, for example, the local Sierra Club leadership stood up. They had been opposing and challenging over the course of several years. And they, at the final hearing, it said, if mining has to take place, this is the way it should take place. I pride myself in being able to work within different competitive, seemingly at odds stakeholders, and out of that forming a dedication to working together to better the quality of life for the community. That's what I hope to bring to the state Senate in Legislative District 7.
Well, that's quite an impressive career, sir. Nancy?
Hi, yes, thank you very much. I'm Nancy Hartle, running for a seat in the House in LD7. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I was in the United States Air Force for 20 years, and I'm very proud to have served. I retired as a major with an honorable discharge. I spent a total of 37 years in the healthcare field, and the majority of that was as a women's health nurse practitioner. So you can know kind of where my heart is in some of the issues that we're dealing with today. I also was a member of the union while I was in the nursing field, and I'm a strong union supporter. Civically, I am a precinct committee person. I'm a state committee member, and I've been working at the early voting office for the last 2 to 3 years. I'm not now because of I had to work just through the presidential preference, and then now since I'm a candidate, I can't work there. So far as why I'm running, I heard Liz Cheney say that she feels like we're sleepwalking into a dictatorship, and I can't say that I deny that. I'm very concerned about that. As a previous officer in the Air Force, I'm very worried about our country. So I take that a step further in Arizona. I think we've been asleep at the wheel, where we've been allowing, unfortunately, very extremist MAGA folks getting into every level of our government. And I'm hoping to change that because I'm very concerned that they have the underlying theme of the Project 2025, which is going to get rid of our Social Security and Medicare and a lot of things that our elderly population, me being one of them, really rely on. When I look back to 9/11 and how we drew together after that in the United States as Americans, that's I'm hoping we can get back to that someday, because now we have January 6, 2021, with people storming our Capitol. And then we have a recent assault, an assassination attempt on one of our candidates. And I strongly believe that extremism and violence are never the answer. So I really feel like we need to fight. But when I say fight, I don't mean with fists and flagpoles like people have been doing. I'm talking about we reasonable, intelligent people. We fight with our brains and our ballots, and we get the right people into the legislature. So what I want to just say to you today, I can't go through my whole platform. I don't want to even try that, but I want you to understand who I am at the core. And my beliefs are, I believe in women over embryos, children over guns, books over bans, the planet over pollution, freedom over fascism, and of course, democracy over dictatorship. So I'm hoping that in the legislature, we can all come together and start working again in bipartisan ways and really work to help our democracy stay strong. And so that's a little bit of me in a nutshell. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy. And I just want to remind everybody, I'm going to go a little bit long because there's 5 of you, but if everybody could try to keep your answers succinct, we can get more questions in and more to talk about. So I'm going to go kind of heavy here. A Maricopa County Superior Court judge just ruled that the Secure the Border Act can stay on the ballot. Is this ballot referral good policy in your opinion? And what do you think the state legislature should do with the border policy? Let's start with you, Haley.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do not believe that this is good policy. I think that allowing the state to have more of a hand in our immigration policy is dangerous. It can lead to more of a criminalization and militarization at our border. I think we need to be looking at this issue with humanity, with respect, and treating people with dignity. I think this looks like not criminalizing people who are trying to provide aid at the border. I think it looks like helping along the legal process of immigration rather than stopping people from even getting into this country in the first place. And I think it also looks like listening to our people so that the Latino population in the state does not feel like the victim and the villain. I think that's a terrible policy. That's a terrible thing to have for the people in the state. So I want to treat this issue, like I said, with humanity and with respect.
Thank you, Haley. Mr. Revelis.
Well, I've certainly not been a stranger to that challenge of the Border Security Act. I got on in retirement. As I said, I was determined to dedicate my energy to helping the vulnerable. When I retired and returned home to Arizona, it was to a fearful, fear-infused environment that was physically being experienced in Latino neighborhoods with neighborhood raids over the simplest of allegations of a cracked windshield and broken taillight, with a sheriff rounding up people. And it resulted in my getting involved and becoming a plaintiff in a class action lawsuit that ended up finding Sheriff Arpaio guilty of unconstitutional racial profiling. And we need to recognize that Arizona and Mexico are undeniably linked culturally and economically. They are the largest trading partner of Arizona. They provide a workforce that has helped us during wartime. Mexican workers came and helped mine in the mining operations so that we could produce the defense material that depended on these minerals that were being mined. And they even now produce the workforce that brings food to our table. And they do this with respect for the law. The Cato Institute, a libertarian organization, has documented and has reported time after time that the scapegoating of Mexicans as being criminals and rapists, etc., is an outline distortion of the facts. In fact, the studies have found that immigrant communities experience lower crime rates than other non-immigrant communities. So I think we're at an opportunity again to get rid of this horrific demonization of neighbors, recalling that even in our old traditional teachings of the Old and the New Bible, remember that we're all once strangers and we should welcome our neighbors.
All right, thank you, Mr. Revelis. Barbie.
There we go. Thank you so much. I think that the act is a good act, and I actually believe that a country with no borders isn't a country. And being a actual border state, that we have to do something to make sure that America's protected and Arizonans are protected. I myself and my sister both came from Bangkok, Thailand. We came here legally, and I know that it can be done. My brother-in-law also came from Cayman Islands, and I know that just recently, in the last 12 years, I know that it can be done legally, and that when you're coming over the border illegally, you're coming over and you're starting with a crime. I'm excited that we now, our law enforcement here in Arizona is able to arrest and detain the people who are coming over illegally, and that the bill also addresses the fentanyl crisis, and I am glad to see that as well. So I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, your 2 cents?
Hi. Yeah, I'll try to keep it small. I do not support the bill. I agree with Roberto. I think it's dehumanizing and racial profiling and that kind of thing. They even want to include DACA folks in these roundups. I don't want to see any Operation Wetback or racial roundup like Arpaio did, any of this kind of thing. We are a nation of immigrants. The United States and particularly Arizona needs immigrants. To do just this whole big sweep. And this whole thing about open borders versus closed borders is such a simplistic way of looking at this. It frustrates me when I hear that kind of comment. It isn't just one thing or another. It isn't a door that's open and shut. When we put up walls and close borders and so forth, we not only stop people from coming through, but trade and tourism. And it just is not beneficial for either side. This has been an issue for 40 years through many presidents. And nobody's gotten a perfect solution yet. I have some ideas, and I'm sure we all do, but it is not simplistic, and it can't be fixed with one simple move. And no, I do not support that bill. So thank you.
Thank you. And Walt?
Well, thanks. And I got to say thanks to thanks for your service for my Air Force and Navy personnel down there. My dad spent 26 years in the Air Force, and he's always bugging me because I joined the Army. So
yeah.
You got some kudos from him. Listen, I agree with my colleague Barbie. We need to make sure that we are securing our borders. Yeah, it's true that the federal government has a responsibility to do that. However, under the 10th Amendment, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, we're supposed to be protecting our borders and protecting Arizonans. In 2020, I ran a bill, HCR 2004. And what that did is that actually continued to build the wall with the construction pieces that we had down there. That was leftover money and material from the COVID infrastructure dollars. If we don't do this, we're going to see a run on fentanyl. We're going to see a run at the border. And I want to point something out, and I always hear this, that the bill is actually going to hurt the economic growth, revenue, so on and so forth in Arizona. And that is simply not the case. What the bill does, it stops those folks that are coming in illegally when they cross the border. There is no operation, as you said, I'm not going to use that word because that's a disparaging term, but they're not rounding up Latinos. They're not rounding up folks on the street. They're not going to people's jobs and doing that or their homes. They are stopping illegal traffic coming into our southern border. We also need to take a look at our northern border because I think that folks just kind of look at that and they think that we're talking about folks that happen to have brown skin. And that's not what the issue is. The issue is that we have a large amount of drug trafficking coming into our country, north and south. We have human trafficking coming from the north and south. We have a percentage of children, Arizona kids, that are being taken off the streets and ran through the tunnel system south of the border in Arizona. So we need to protect our kids. We need to protect our communities from drugs. We need to make sure that law enforcement has the resources they need to protect our communities. And I got to tell you, if you plan on being a lawmaker down at the Arizona Capitol, your first responsibility, regardless of what party you belong to, is to protect the citizens of Arizona. And this is one of those pieces of legislation that we need. The beauty of this legislation, and I'll close with this, is that this comes to the people. It's not legislation that it's being voted on the House for third read. So Arizonans will be able to decide if they want closed borders or not. And they'll be able to decide if they want to protect their communities, as I want to protect my communities, and my colleague Barbie does also. So I'm for this bill. I think it's a great bill. It could use some improvement. I plan on tweaking some of it, the legislation, when I go back, and making sure that our law enforcement has the resources to be able to do their jobs with it.
Mr. Grady, you said you have a lot of time, extra time. Let's extend the discussion on this. First of all, there is no workable legal system. Right now, the first priority visas under our existing broken system is to reunite families. That has been the core driving element of our immigration system. Right now, an applicant who filed under the highest priority has been on a waiting list for 21 years. So the system is broken. Secondly, it is not
Mr. Reveles, 15 more seconds I'll give you. And then I've got another group of candidates waiting as well, and it's getting late. So if you can wrap it up in 15 seconds.
Well, crossing without an inspection is not a criminal act. It is misdemeanor.
All right,
Mike,
thank you.
Is he directing that at me, or is he just making a statement? Because if he's directing it at me, I'd like to be able to rebuttal that. Because I didn't know this was a debate, but if it is, I'd like to be able to rebuttal
it's not a debate. It's supposed to be just get to know you, get to know your positions and so forth.
So I would ask going forward that that this doesn't happen anymore, because if he's going to do a statement like that after my colleague and I talk about our points, then we should have a chance to be able to do that. So if we're not going to do that, I would ask the gentleman not to do the rebuttal like he did, because it does. It's not what this forum is all about.
And we're going to be bringing in the next group here in a couple minutes. And, you know, right now I just want to say thank you to everybody who came and attended. And Roberto Reveles, thank you. Walt Blackman, Barbie Engel, Nancy Hartle, and Haley Creighton, thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience, and good luck on all your races and your primaries. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, Walt.
You too, Barb. Take care.
Evening, Legislative District 8. And with us are Janine Connolly, a Democrat who's running for the House, and Trey Rook, Green candidate who's running for the House also. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to start out with an easy question that I've given everybody else. So why do you want to be a legislator? And tell us a little bit about yourself first, but why do you want to be a legislator? Let's start with you, Janine.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. So I'm Janine Connolly. I am a single mom. I put myself through college while raising 4 daughters. I went to MCC and graduated. I also went to ASU and now have a master's degree in advocacy communication. Now that is giving voice to the marginalized and influencing policy. And I can't wait to go downtown to put those to good use. I am a grassroots type advocate. I have worked my entire career on major infrastructure projects across the state. And those people who know my work ethic, they know my strong passion for doing good, my ability to bring parties to the table over diverse and sensitive issues and find continuous threads to solve problems. They've encouraged me to run for the legislature. And I think they're right. I think that it's what is needed at this time. So I've been knocking on doors, and the voters of LD8 have expressed to me that they have concerns about our direction. I'd like to provide a new direction. I feel like personal agendas have sort of taken over downtown, and the top issues of the state have been shelved for a number of years. And we're not addressing things like the environment or water. K-12 education goes, on and on and on. And we have affordable housing to address now. We're still looking at the unsheltered. And I'd just like to see us start to put our personal agendas aside and work for the greater good. So I'm going downtown to hope to lead that charge. I'm a Democrat, to be clear, very much a Democrat. I'm running to fill one of 2 open house seats in LD8 because I'm looking to provide that new and straightforward approach to representation. I joke with everybody, only I am very serious about the fact that I recognize that to represent is in the title of this job, and I'm ready to do that. When elected, I am not going to sacrifice our ideals as Democrats. I'll be sticking to the values that the people of Legislative District Number 8 share, and I will be working well with others to get things done. So I am Janine Connolly, and I'm here tonight to earn your vote. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Janine. Trey?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm pleasure to officially meet you, Connolly. I am running for the Green Party legislative seat here in LD8 as well. My name is Trey. I am a Gen Z candidate. My entire platform is anti-big business, anti-corporation, anti-lobbyist. I'm here to give a young perspective and a young, fresh outlook on the very real issues that my generation and Gen Alpha are experiencing. So I was born and raised here in Arizona, born in Flagstaff, raised here in Maricopa, went to middle school, high school out here. I unfortunately was unable to attend higher education as life was a little difficult. I experienced homelessness here in Arizona. So that is a very real and personal issue that I will spend the majority of my time tackling. I don't want anyone my age or younger to experience Arizona homelessness. In this kind of weather, especially, it's inhumane. The last 4 years, I believe, homelessness is 73% on the rise, increase of 73%, majority being older and homeless individuals, veterans. That to me is unacceptable. I have no intentions of letting that slide, letting my community, people that I grew up with, parents that I know, relatives that I have on one paycheck away from being homeless. I myself fit that category. So my entire platform and objective is giving a real voice to small income earners like myself who have been completely ravaged by the 2-party system the last 30 years in Arizona. So thank you for.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. Well, let's talk about housing then. So, Trey, why don't you answer first? What do you think of the legislature's progress on the housing shortage, and what more do you think should be done?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's laughable, to be very honest. Again, I just mentioned, according to CAS, homelessness has increased 73% in the last 4 years. Right now, there are currently over 9,000 homeless individuals in Maricopa County alone. I myself service that area every week. I feed the homeless with an organization called the Masa Project. I see firsthand how drugs are a root cause to a lot of the issues. I see how the police do nothing to mitigate real crises in real time for these individuals. I see that they have nowhere to go, no resources. There's no resource allocation from the budget as well to really address root causes. So I think it's laughable. I would have a very, very, very open and strict set of policies implemented. One would be rent control. So I would cap I would fix the annual increases at the CPI rate. So no random fixed increases that force people out because they can no longer afford a $400 or $500 monthly rental increase. In addition to that, I would also cap security deposits. Right now, there's no real restrictions or legislation in place to cap security deposits. A company can ask you for 3 times the monthly rent, which is outrageous. I would cap it at 1 times the monthly rent. I would also reduce income requirements. So the apartment complex I'm in required a 2.5 times the monthly rent to qualify for this little 2-bedroom apartment here in Tempe, Arizona. I would reduce that to 1.5 times the monthly rent. So it will drastically improve eligibility for low income earners like myself. And homelessness. So again, right now in Maricopa County, there are over 9,000 homeless individuals and there are inadequate shelters. Again, a big portion of that is over the age of 55. There have been a few Senate bills, Senate Bill 1471, that attempted to address.
Trey, if you could wrap it up in a couple seconds here.
That would be my last point. That would be
gets
perfect.
a chance. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I would just say right now we have a huge crisis. The 2-party system has not been doing the job. Individuals like myself need real people who understand the struggle to advocate for them.
Thank you, Trey. Janine?
Well, and thank you, Trey. I did, as I mentioned, I have a degree in advocacy communication master's, and I did my thesis work with the 12 to 26-year-olds who survived looking like ASU students and live on the streets of Mill Avenue. Yeah, it is. I'm very happy to meet you, and you're singing to my heart. This is a huge issue, and I'm glad to hear that you're so well versed. Thank you for that. So the 2 bills that were introduced in this last session, were maybe a surprise. I don't know. This is from the book of Janine, but I think it was very interesting that we got 2 bills as far as they went, and the parties that came together to support them. It is a massive issue, and when we're knocking on doors, voters are talking to us, and affordable housing is the second most common topic that comes up. We've met people who have 30-something still living at home. We've met people who are ready to downsize from the family house into a smaller house and can't afford to because the price of housing is so high and interest rates are so high. So they're stuck maintaining a very large home. And there are just a lot of dimension to the affordable housing question. And so I'm guessing that the best bill that didn't make it through that probably should have will be back next session. And hopefully people will be more ready. People meaning the legislators and the public at large, and then entities that weighed in that have concerns. And we'll be able to find a really good middle ground for that bill to move forward. I am pretty strongly in the camp that cities put a lot of energy into bringing their general plans together, that they should be allowed a lot of local control when it comes to what is built and the type of housing, etc. Of course, we need cities to move on this. We need a few of the big ones probably to get brave and move on it. But I think what I'm trying to say is that a balance needs to be struck between state oversight and what ends up in the hands of cities and towns when it comes to this issue. I really champion this issue, as would everyone who lives in an area where they're struggling with this, and we're struggling with it all across the nation. And so hopefully we can get fixed or get focused and get some things done in the coming session.
All right, thank you, Janine. So What do you see as the job of a legislator?
What do I?
Yes.
Well, first, I think that if you're serving in the House of Representatives, your job is to represent. And I am not going downtown with a massive personal agenda. I'm going downtown to represent the voters of LD8. The first issue that they bring up to us far and away is K-12 education. They've got some strong ideas about how that needs to move forward and be better, but they're very concerned that vouchers are weighing on the budget. And they're very concerned that public taxes go into the hands of or go toward public schools, and that more money goes into the hands of teachers. So I would like to work on the issues that voters are talking to me about. I see as our second responsibility to really look at things from a statewide perspective, not just from our legislative district perspective, although that is the first thing that we should be focused on, is fighting for what the voters of our LDs are looking for us to do. And we have such a wonderful, wide and diverse state that will make very interesting discussions downtown. But I do think we have to, again, put on a fiduciary hat and look at things from a statewide perspective as well. And the third thing I think that we really need to do as legislators is fix this budget. I think it's really crippling us. It worries a lot of people. You know, they only hear bad things and never hear good things about it. But I do think I'm old enough to have lived through periods of time where we had a healthy budget and periods of time where we had to recover from a not so healthy budget. And I think that we owe the voters of this state the security and confidence in the legislature to get our financial house in order.
All right. Thank you, Janine. And Trey.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick with it. I think simply the first responsibility is balancing the budget. That's the sole focus, really, of a legislator. I firmly don't believe that we should be in a $2 billion deficit right now. I think Ari from LD2 said it really well. We have a lot of misappropriations of funds, a lot of corruption from both the Democratic and Republican side. I think that's ridiculous. So I think that's the main focus, is balancing the budget, being a little bit more conservative from that angle. And the second and most important thing, and I definitely don't mean any disrespect, but I would say the majority of the candidates tonight have said listening was the biggest, or one of the most important things, listening to the constituents. My problem with that is that listening doesn't get the job done. It doesn't make the candidate relate or make the issue personable to them. In fact, according to cooperative.com, only 3 to 4% of popular bills are actually passed by legislators. 3 to 4%. So if you have 70% of the masses saying, this is what I want, more than likely it will not happen, because it gets caught up in bureaucracy, caught up in politics. So that's why I think the two-party system is just a failure. We should elect more third-party candidates who aren't bowing down to corporate interest, aren't taking paychecks from lobbyist groups that benefit from misappropriation of funds, say, for lack of better words. So that's it. I would say, instead of just listening and pretending, let's actually take action. Let's actually put people who can relate to issues, who have a connection to the real people who are struggling. And let's just get away with this fake listening, listen to constituents while passing none of the legislation they want. Yeah.
All right. And let's wrap it up with one last question. So, Trey, why should you be elected as the only Green candidate down at the legislature?
I feel like I'm the only real person giving real answers. If you check out my website, treyforaz.com, I have real policies, real facts, real testimonies from experts on the issues that matter most to us. Again, I was born and raised here. I'm the only Gen Z candidate running for this office. I've been homeless in Arizona. I've been poor. I've been the product of Republican policy the last 30 years. I've been the product of Democratic failures in the Senate, the House, on a federal level. People like me who have been completely voiceless and sidestepped, and who have just been a statistic for wealthy elites, wealthy corporate lobbyist groups. I've had it. I'm done with it. No more of it. We need real change, real people in office, and I have no problem being loud. I have no problem calling things out the way they need to be called out. And I have no problem saying things like Free Palestine and AIPAC is a terror organization. I have no problem saying things like that because I don't owe anybody anything. I don't bow down to the DNC. I don't bow down to the Republican National Convention. I don't bow down to lobbyist groups, and I don't bow down to corporate interest. I will get the job done because it matters the most to me. That's why I should be voted in.
Thank you, Trey. Janine, the last word of the entire night.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks everyone for coming and for those of you who stayed through the entire evening. Also appreciate the Clean Election Commission for giving us this opportunity. And it's nice to meet you, Trey. I hope that we'll connect. Okay. I'm just looking to provide a new direction. You know, I want a new and straightforward approach to representation. I want coming together, whether you're coming together with voters or coming together as a legislature. I want to share honest and civil dialogue. I think that we've got to get back to that. And then just finding the continuous threads, because coalition building is just vital right now. It's so important. I am for effective government that moves good policy forward. I'll be sticking to the values that we share as Democrats, working well with others to get things done. I have a good resume and it's democracy. And so let's bring this together. I'm Janine Connolly, and I hope that I have earned your vote in the July primary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Trey. Thank you to all of the candidates and who joined us tonight. Thank you all for your patience, especially you two who were the last to go. And I also want to thank the Citizens Clean Elections Commission for putting this on tonight, and it's going to put them on for the rest of the week up until Thursday. And I just want to remind everybody that the Arizona Capital Times is going to have a candidate's guide in our next edition of the Capital Times coming out this Friday. And it's going to be packed with information on all these people you saw tonight and everyone who didn't join us tonight as well. So I want to say have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.